The output of any geographic study are maps. Maps tell us a lot about what is happening and are powerful visuals because they are designed with a certain purpose in mind. Geographers have many tools they use to produce maps for showing data, changing an opinion, or conveying an insight. The tool geographers use vary greatly because geographic studies cover the entire Earth, including people, place, environment, and space. The range of tools in the discipline of geography includes fieldwork, map, and aerophoto analysis, cultural and physical landscapes, geographic information systems, remote sensing, global positioning systems, surveys, interviews, ethnography, computer modeling, and statistical analysis. In this lecture, we will concentrate on remote sensing, global positioning system, and geographic information system. Remote sensing is very simple. If you can scan the distance ahead of you, you are engaging in remote sensing. In other words, remote sensing is acquiring information about something that is located at a distance from you. In a personal sense, your eyes are your sensors that send signals to your brain so that you can see the object in front of you. For geographers, remote sensing uses instruments or sensors to detect Earth-related phenomena and to provide information about them. We do this by launching satellites into space with high-resolution cameras to take pictures of the Earth's surface. This also occurs from an airplane, which is closer to the Earth's surface, as in aerial photographs. How geographers use this tool is depicted in the example from the textbook of the post-earthquake damage in Bermudas, Algeria on May 21, 2003. The map in figure 1.15 on the far upper left shows the epicenter of the earthquake. And the photo just to the right of that shows the structural damage of the buildings, specifically of collapsed apartment. As you can see, structural damage in the city was severe and spatially variable. The availability of high-resolution remotely sensed data with sub-meter resolution, as shown in the far left bottom image, makes possible the rapid identification of structural damage across the affected areas. When buildings collapse, they produce an identifiable textural signature not present in areas where buildings have not collapsed. Using these textual signatures, geographers can then create maps, as shown in the bottom center image, identifying regions with significant percentages of collapsed buildings. Lastly, the collapse of buildings changes the cultural landscape, in effect creating more edges. Visually, we can see this pattern in the more chaotic and brighter appearances of the images in figure 1.15D. But the use of software to detect these changes speeds up the analytical process. Identifying high damage areas is essential to relief coordination following a natural disaster. A global positioning system, or GPS, which has been developed and funded by the U.S. Department of Defense since the 1970s, uses a constellation of artificial satellites, radio signals, and receivers to determine the absolute location of people, places, or features on Earth. GPS has allowed us to acquire more data about the Earth, specifically location-based data, such as coordinate points to update maps, confirm legal boundaries of property, to track and inventory different species of plants and animals, and to monitor conditions in agricultural fields. GPS has become so popular that location-based services are rapidly growing to become a valuable commodity. A person can use their smartphone to find all kinds of nearby businesses such as restaurants, banks, and stores. However, with all this information now at our fingertips, ethical concerns have surfaced due to everyone knowing your location as well. Geographers Jerome Dobson and Peter Fisher coined the term Geo Slavery to refer to a practice in which one entity, the master, coercively or surreptitiously monitors and exerts control over the physical location of another individual, the slave. Maps can be very useful to us. They paint a vivid picture full of information that we otherwise may not be able to comprehend easily. We now can produce robust maps out of complex situations and problems from a Geographic Information System, or GIS. A GIS is a geographic computerized mapping system of hardware, software, and data that produces these maps. The usefulness of a GIS comes from the fact that we can collect a different array of data and produce a meaningful map out of all the data combined. A GIS is user interactive when viewed on a computer screen. in that users can click on a map feature and obtain information about it, turn data on and off for viewing, query the data, and can perform statistical analysis and calculations, such as identifying the most optimal route between locations. All data entered into a GIS must be geo-referenced, which means the data has to be tied to locations on the Earth's surface. This is done by assigning its longitudinal and latitudinal point to the data. To better understand longitude and latitude, think of a grid overlaid onto the Earth's surface. Every intersection of the x and y axis creates a point. The x-axis is the line of latitude and the y-axis is the line of longitude. Every GIS is built around two types of data, spatial and attribute. Spatial data consists of the latitude and longitude of the boundaries, cities, and rivers. In other words, geographic features. Attribute data, on the other hand, describes the geographic features and is stored in tables, for instance, addresses, names, numbers, dollar amounts, etc. In a GIS, we usually think in terms of layers when it comes to viewing or manipulating the data. A GIS stores georeferenced data in layers in one of two formats, vector or raster. Vector data uses latitude and longitude coordinates to represent geographic features as points, lines, or other complex shapes as shown in the top left image. While raster data uses equally sized cells to represent features. The bottom image shows that each pixel contains a value that identifies the same land cover. 1 equals forest, 2 equals grassland, and 3 equals wetland. The maps on the right show various data layers in either vector or raster format. Here the vector data is shown as a point for cities and lines for roads, and the raster data is shown as a topographic relief map and a political map. Even though GIS is an extremely valuable tool, it has a few criticisms. First of all, it is expensive, which does not make it easily accessible to many. Users would have to buy the necessary hardware, software, and data. The software can be proprietary and the data even more expensive. Because of the expense, only the rich can afford it, which reinforces the power divide in society and leads us to ponder whose interest is it really serving. Lastly, it does not consider local knowledge. Local knowledge is knowledge that is held by a society on everyday way of life in the community. In other words, what we do on a daily basis. It's not really written anywhere, we just know it. With this in mind, it promotes a detached and strongly Western view of the world. You can do a GIS with ever visiting the site, and therefore local knowledge may be left out of the equation, and you may not have the full spectrum of the problem in finding the best solution. Please pause the video and answer the following. Is the kind of geographic awareness in a GPS a benefit or a hindrance to personal security? Consider the pros and cons and defend your position. In your own words and using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific in your answer.